morning, good afternoon, good evening to you wherever you may be, and welcome to our latest LogiSim webinar. My name is Brett Marshall, and I'm the editor-in-chief of LogiSim magazine, and I'm joined today by Dr. Raymond Krishnan, who is the president of the Logistics and Supply Chain Management Society. Our topic, or the topic of our webinar today, is on transport carrier management systems. It's bridging the freight forwarder and the carrier connect. And I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our guests. Joining us today for the discussion, we have Mark O'Connell. Mark is the Chief Executive Officer for Yojee. He's got 25 years experience in technology and logistics globally, a strong background in engineering, sales, marketing, and product and project management, and a proven track record with companies such as Mainfreight and WiseTech Global. Also joining us is Shane Diapril, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Yojee. Shane also has 25 years of extensive experience in operations, sales management, change management, leadership within the Asia Pacific logistics sector, and he's previously worked with WiseTech Global and successfully founded Orange Line Consulting. So welcome to you gentlemen today. We've got a great topic. The Southeast Asian logistics landscape is vast and fragmented and diverse. Freight forwarders generally work with multiple carriers, many of whom lack digital tools, leading to communication breakdowns, operational inefficiencies, and a lack of real-time visibility. So if you've ever found yourself dealing with the twists and turns of the markets in Asia, like tricky regulations and fast-changing demands and juggling spreadsheets, endless emails and phone calls to coordinate freight, then this is a session that's really going to help you find some answers. It's all about efficiency, collaboration, and keeping up with the industry's priorities. It's about bringing people in the supply chain together to create a connected ecosystem where ideas and resilience thrive. And I think with that, I'm going to pass to Mark and Shane to give us some further insights into Yojee and also the solution that they have in the TCMS space. Mark and Shane, over to you.
Thanks.
Just going to share my screen. Should be able to see.
Yep, we can see you.
Excellent. Mark?
Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for attending. I know your time is precious, so hopefully you can gain a lot out of this this short webinar. I'm here really to talk about the challenges in the industry, and of course we'll weave a little bit about how Yojee solves that. But really this is just about a conversation about mine and Shane's experiences of sort of close to 30 years of doing this in Southeast Asia. And actually both Shane and I have done a lot of this in North America and Europe as well. And we see the same problems geographically all over the world. So first and foremost, who is Yojee? If you've never heard of us, we're a logistics tech provider. Okay, so we write logistics technology. We were founded in Singapore in 2016, and that's where our head office still is. We have a number of offices across the Asia Pacific, but our head office is in Singapore. And we shortly listed on the ASX at the time of founding. So we've been on the ASX, or the Australian Stock Exchange, so we're a public company since 2016. And we focus on building a global platform, so a single global SaaS platform where all the actors of the supply chain can come together and collaborate. And when I talk about actors, I'm talking about freight forwarders, shippers, BCOs, consignees, receivers of the freight. And at Yojee, we're very passionate about building really modern, easy to use, sort of community-based collaborative systems. And we really like to challenge or disrupt the traditional logistics models. We have two products. Our TCMS product, which is predominantly what we're going to talk about today and the challenges it solves around transport carrier management system. But recently, if you follow us, we're also building the next generation of freight forwarding software, okay? So we'll be releasing that to the world, starting in Asia Pacific early next year. Next slide, Shane. So really here, this is what we've come here to talk about, is the complexity of Southeast Asia's road freight landscape, and kind of what Shane and I and the team here at Yojee, and I guess what a lot of you have experienced over your time dealing in this geography. And what we really find, these are sort of 5 of the key problems or key challenges you have in Southeast Asia. And first and foremost is what we find is it's a highly fragmented carrier ecosystem. And what I mean by that is you have very few large 3PLs and carriers with their own tech and infrastructure. And the majority of the freight that moves around Southeast Asia is on small to medium sized carriers who have very limited technology, I guess. Everything sort of gets moved around on WhatsApp, spreadsheets, and very much it's all paper-based as well. The other big challenge that you have, which is sort of really more relevant in Southeast Asia and Europe, is you have lots of different languages. And so that can create communication with drivers who will have no or low English. When communicating within the carrier networks and with the forwarders and the customers and the receivers, you've basically got to tie in a whole myriad of different languages and sort of communicate that in different ways. So it has its own challenges. And as I said, it's a very manual, paper-based sort of environment there here in Southeast Asia. In a lot of in North America where I've worked and in Australia and New Zealand, a lot of the carriers have some sort of technology or are integrated with some sort of technology, but simply we don't find that the case in Southeast Asia. And so what that really means is it becomes very difficult to get any sort of real-time information about where your freight is, where the bottlenecks are in your network, who's performing well, who's not performing well, what your DIFOT stats are with each individual carrier, how you're performing with different customers, how do you even restructure your network without any sort of real information. So these are some of the key problems that we find facing Southeast Asia's road network. Shane, did you want to add anything to that, or?
I think you covered that off pretty well, Mark. It is a different environment in Southeast Asia, and requires specialised solutions. So where we come in.
Okay, I think Shane's going to talk to the next slide.
Yeah. So just to Mark's point, we do see a gap in that land transport visibility. I think, when you look at international freight, there's a lot of integrations that happen with carriers and the main core sort of systems, but that first mile, last mile land transport requirement still has a lot of visibility gaps. And whether we work with freight forwarders or BCOs, we see varying degrees of visibility when our customers might deal with high-tech carriers that have their own technology versus carriers that, if you can use the term low-tech, that have a limited amount of technology. And it's fair to say that probably most of the people on this call, whether they're freight forwarders or BCOs, have that experience, right? They have carriers that have a vast amount of technology, or carriers that have a small amount of technology, depending on what space they operate in. And when you think about the different participants that are party to the land transport, whether it's the first mile or last mile, like shippers, LSPs, carriers, and recipients, really that can translate into low or limited visibility in different pockets. It can become difficult to control. It can become difficult to scale if you don't have that data there, or even tech to be able to manage those movements. And then ultimately the recipient, who's the beneficiary of these services, can find it very difficult to get a good customer service experience or even, plan their labour requirements. So we often see that the first mile and last mile land transport environment is very unpredictable and unreliable, as we've got on the screen there. So when we talk about mastering road transport in Southeast Asia, it's about being able to become predictable and become reliable and being able to actually manage your entire carrier network on a single platform. It's kind of why we call the product TCMS versus TMS, not a traditional TMS in that sense. We're about managing the carrier network to give give value to our customers' users, but ultimately the receivers of the cargo. And that's where you can really master road freight in Southeast Asia, by getting control of that entire carrier network, regardless of the tech levels of your carrier partners. Mark, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that sums that up really well, Shane. So, yeah.
So one of the ways you can do that is obviously with visibility, right? So, we talk about ourselves as a transport carrier management system, and we see huge value in customers being able to take control of their carrier partner network. So, obviously I don't want this to turn into a sales demo, but, visual tools that allow our customers to visualize either segments of their cargo or segments of their freight requirements, that can put live measures or metrics right at the fingertips of our customers to enable real-time decisions and real-time measures that can be used to assess your requirements and make immediate decisions to plan and execute your transport movements. And it is important to note here that we see this management of your carrier networks in two sort of sections. One, you have your contracted carriers, but two, you might have your own fleet. So a platform that allows you to execute, if you do have some of your own fleet in some regions, maybe in Indonesia, but in Singapore, you're entirely outsourced. But giving yourself a consistent experience, regardless of how you manage your fleet or how you manage your own contracted carrier network, is key to actually closing that entire gap on land transport visibility. Anything to add there, Mark?
No, and what I really wanted to say here, so Shane touched on this TCMS concept, transport carrier management system. So there are a lot of, I wanted to make sure that we sort of differentiate between a TMS and a visibility tool. So people would have heard a lot about visibility tools, and I won't name them, but they have their big challenges in Southeast Asia, and we've seen them try and come into Southeast Asia very unsuccessfully, because what they do is they try and digitize a network that's already, well, they try and surface visibility milestones and PODs around a digital network. And as we've said, a lot of Southeast Asia isn't digitized. So these visibility tools are trying to plug into systems that aren't there, right? So it's very challenging to come into Southeast Asia with just pure visibility. And then equally on the other side of the coin is you have a transport management system. But transport management systems are about managing heavy asset vehicles, and each one of those becomes a distributed system in each one of your carriers, and so it's very difficult to implement. A lot of what we do here at Yojee as well is around adopting. So it's one thing providing these technology solutions for Southeast Asia and these carriers, but it's another thing altogether trying to get them to adopt, right? And that's a really important part of any technology or any system, if that makes sense. And I think when we talk about bridging the gap between the freight forwarders or the cargo owners or the shippers and the carriers, it's really important to try and create a single experience. So when you're dealing with multiple carriers, you don't want to have different experiences within each individual carrier. It doesn't scale. It's very hard to adopt, and it's very hard to make work, right? So you really want to look at trying to create a single solution that sort of glues your carrier network up to your freight forwarding software. Because what happens is, as we all know, every time freight moves between individual parties in the supply chain, so if it's moving between a depot and a carrier and a different carrier, it creates friction. And that friction will, whether it's in the movement of the physical freight or in the movement of the data, will always create cost. And it has the potential to lose your revenue and degrade your customer service. So you want to try and basically, it's all about minimizing the friction physically and information technology wise when that freight moves, right? And that's really what you're trying to achieve here with technology.
Yeah, so some of the tools that we have at our disposal would help to master road freight in Southeast Asia is the ability for us to give a single platform to our customers, whether they be BCOs or freight forwarders. That platform can then connect into high-tech carriers that can actually feed milestones back in, but still give our customers that single view. as well as if you have got a low-tech carrier, we can digitize them as well by giving them the actual platform as well, that they can then have tools that then allow them to execute their own freight movements and plan and then digitize the entire network. So the way we like to think of it is we sit in the middle of all the participants. So we have this concept of centralized, visualized, optimal. Right? So whether you are a BCO or a freight forwarder that has high-tech carriers, low-tech carriers, some of your own fleet, you want a system that can actually allow your users to have a single platform that behind the scenes you can connect to all of your carrier partners, digitize where necessary, and collaborate in real time, like we showed there. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell, right? If you sit there, but that's also the solution to mastering road freight in Southeast Asia, as we see it, by giving that single experience to our customers that allow them to digitize their first mile and last mile carrier networks.
And I think what's important too, Shane, is by having that single platform and having a technology solution that sits in between your carriers, in between your warehouse management system or your freight management system or your order management system and your customers, is it allows you to have data-driven conversations, and that's really important. To have a lot of the conversations around performance that happen with your customers or your carriers, if it's not in some form of technology, then it's more of a gut feel, or it's more emotional. It's less about actual statistics and actual data, right? And so, what our customers really benefit from is when they're having disputes with their carriers about performance, or where they can identify based on data blockages in the network, or orders that seem to take a long time with certain carriers. They can point to some real data or evidential data that can support those conversations, right? And what it means is you can get ahead of those conversations. You can become really sticky with your customers, which is really important, because at the end of the day, this is a service industry, and you can become really sticky with your carriers as well. So that's a really key part of having smart technology at the basis of managing your outsourced carrier networks. The other thing I think we haven't really touched on, but is a really in this day and age, we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about points of failure in your infrastructure and your technology, and what is a big problem for a lot of large companies, especially when they're talking to carriers or trying to integrate with carriers, is it means that they have multiple integration points into their ERP platforms, which generally makes technology departments very, very nervous about doing such projects. And so what the benefit of, again, some of our customers have found is that they have a single point of integration with Yojee, a single point of defense against cyber attacks, and then we take care of all of the carrier integration as well. So it's really something that a lot of modern companies need to think about now, is that cybersecurity aspect as well.
All right, Brett, we want to open up some sort of panel discussions, or Mark and I will keep.
Do you want to go to sorry, Shane, we were going to talk about APP and.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I wasn't sure if we're going to do that on part of the discussion. Okay.
Feel free to discuss that first, and then we'll head into some questions.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Well, this is a real life case that Mark's going to take you through, one of our larger customers.
So just before we get onto this is a really relevant live use case that a customer of ours that we signed just over 12 months ago, APP, or used to be known as Asia Paper and Pulp. So one of the largest paper and pulp companies in the world. I think they distribute paper and pulp products to 130 countries. Based in Indonesia, they work with over 250 carriers on any given day, and that can mean up to 1,500 drivers per day that they had to deal with. They have 6 sites across all of Indonesia, and everything was completely manual. They had no idea of who was coming into their mills, or who was leaving their mills, where their freight was. They had lots of planners trying to work all of this out on spreadsheets on a daily basis, and And we've been working with APP for 12 months. We're halfway through a rollout. And, you know, as you can see, they're doing over 70,000 freight consignments per month. And now what they have is they have control over their network now. They can improve their payment cycles with their carriers. They know exactly which carrier is entering their mills. There's gate passes on our mobile apps. So they have an increased security. They have less theft. They know exactly where all their carrier drivers are, and when they're close to their mills, they know who's going to be late, and they have some, and most importantly, coming back to that point, they have real data now to have conversations about which carriers are performing well, which carriers they might need to switch out, which carriers they need to give more work to. This has been a very successful project for us and for APP. We're very proud of it. And it's just seen us move into more and more of their operations. We'll be moving into their coal and other aspects as well. So it's a shame they couldn't be here today. They wanted to be here, but they've had some few challenges with their SAP systems. But yeah, it's a great real life use case, not just for us, but this is a company who really took digitizing their transport or outsourced carrier network very seriously, and they've over the last 12 months have seen huge benefits to their overall performance of their outsourced carrier network. And it's also really interesting what we learned about that. With those 250 carriers, probably only half a dozen had their own technology. Most of their carriers were very small to medium-sized carriers, or one or two trucks. And by providing these carriers with their own technology, you know, we've seen sort of improvements in how their own carrier fleets work as well. So they've managed to benefit off the technology as well as APP benefiting off the technology on it, like a two-sided platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when the data's on paper and WhatsApp, you can't use it anywhere, right? So, you know, being able to give them that real-time insight is very powerful.
So I think that's probably, yeah, I think, Brett, that's, I mean, the final slide really is, I mean, it's a takeaway here. These are all just, you know, what's your ROI on digitizing your road transport networks? You know, improving customer satisfaction is a really important one, right? Because it gives your customers a consistent experience no matter which carrier they're using. I mean, if you're using some big carriers like DHL, you might get a really good tracking experience, but if you're using much smaller carriers, then you won't get anywhere near the same satisfaction. And it's really strange to try and explain to your customers that they're going to get a different experience depending on which carrier you're using. You're boosting employee efficiency. This is another good one we've seen. You know, in very manual models, you might need half a dozen planners who do things differently on any given day, depending on which carrier they're working with. And so it's very hard to standardize processes, or if Bill's away, then who's going to look after Bill? Because only Bill knows what he does on his spreadsheets. And again, we've talked about smarter decision-making with real-time data. Anyone who runs a business understands the importance of data to make just not just clever decisions, but to get ahead of the decision-making process. You know, finding out that there's going to be a problem after it's a problem is not ideal. And then, of course, something that's very close to Shane and I and the Yojee mission is creating collaboration within your networks, right? You know, creating collaboration and becoming more efficient reduces waste. It's a good thing for everyone if there's less trucks on the road carrying, doing less empty runs. So having a system that can increase the efficiencies of the carrier network is very important. And of course, you know, everyone wants to increase their cash flow and increase their top line and decrease their bottom line. So these are all things that I guess sometimes what Shane and I found that companies get too busy to worry about, because a lot of this stuff, I mean, let's be honest, freight moves around the world every day on paper and it seems to work, but does it really work? And I guess that's the question we're really asking you. Does it really work? And if it does, is it really working that well for you, right? Have you thought about a number of these things that we're bringing up with you? So I think that's
So great points there.
Yeah, fantastic. So
Nope.
Thank
On.
you, Mark, and
Yep.
thank you, Shane. And we've got some questions coming in now online, which is great. And I'm going to throw across to
All right.
Ramon to handle those. Ramon?
Okay. So thanks. Yeah, I think we were so excited to continue the conversation that.
Can you hear me, Brett?
Yes, got you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a little bit choppy.
Brett, can
but
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. All right. I think that's the joys of being in Myanmar. Let me start with you, yeah, Shane. You talked about APP for a bit. With your TCMS, what happens if a driver is in an area with poor or no internet connection? Can the Yojee driver app still be used?
Yes, the driver app can work offline. So if the driver's got a job and they're out of mobile reception, they're still able to capture POD information, capture images, complete the driver surveys or driver checklists, leave any driver notes, and once they get back into a reception area, all of that data will upload. Yes.
Okay, so it captures it, and then when he's back in range, it will be uploaded again. Is that correct?
Yes, or in Wi-Fi network.
Okay.
Yes.
And we had another good question come in from Lei Yen. So she's talking about Indonesia, and as we know, Indonesia's got like 16,000 islands, albeit about 1,000 of them being inhabited. So what happens, aside from truck shipments, do you also cover multimodal shipments as well?
I can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it. Yeah.
Well, essentially, yes. I mean, even with APP, they move between islands, and the TCMS is essentially a multi-legged system. So you can have a land leg and a barge leg. I guess things move between the islands in Indonesia on barges, and simply it's just a leg with a pickup and a drop off. So yes, we do to a large extent, but it's not a rail system or a boat system or an ocean system, but it's certainly a multi-leg system where the legs between the barge leg just becomes a leg of the consignment, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So I guess I think that's some of the questions that we have coming in, and we've got one from Alicia as well. So this is not so much for LCL and FCL dry cargo, but more for truck and road freight. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, predominantly our customers are road freight users. Yes.
Yeah, it is. For this product, for TCMS,
Okay.
so for Mosaic's an air and ocean product for cutting house bills and ocean shipments, but TCMS is about managing the first mile, last mile, if you like. LTL, full truckload, and of course containerized transport.
Thanks for that. Now we've got another one from Aisha as well, which I think is a great question. So this platform includes functionalities like rate shopping, or for someone looking for that, do we also have that function in the TCMS?
Yes, we have a rate. There is a rate engine in the TCMS product. Okay, and so what you can do is you can set as a 3PL, for example, or a shipper or a BCO who's dealing with multiple carriers, you can set up sell rates to your customers, and you can set up buy rates from all the different carriers. And again, the carriers can set up sell rates to the upstream customers, who could be the 3PL, and the system will work out for a consignment, depending on which carrier you're using. It can automatically generate all your costs and can generate all your sales depending on different carriers. So yeah, it has a full rate engine in there. Yeah, it doesn't have, what I will say is that it's not, even though it has a rate engine, it's not an accounting system. Because we're in multiple countries, we don't support accounting for all. So what you can do is you can export those charges or pro forma invoices to your accounting system and then generate your invoices from there. Hopefully that answers that. don't know, Raymond's still there?
I think we may have lost Ramon again, so let me just have a look through these questions.
Okay, my apologies there. I dropped off for a second. So, if you want to make the rates only visible to, say, your officers, but do you also then allow your customers to access the system or the tool and then still use the tool but without the visibility to the rates?
Yeah, so when you say the customers, I'm assuming you mean the customer, like the customers of the customers, if you know what I mean. So the people who are moving the freight, or the shippers or the consignees, yeah, they don't get access to, they can't see the rate cards, right? And they can't see the individual carrier rate cards, certainly. So they'll only see the rates that are presented to them. And it's more of a quote type concept. So they'll put in the weights and dims and from and to locations, and then they can get a rate back. So no, that's all hidden from the end customers, especially the individual carrier rates.
So let me ask you this, yeah? Just changing gears a bit. If I'm an LTL, FTL truck provider, what are some of the benefits, the clear advantages of using TCMS against using your usual Excel spreadsheets and your walkie-talkies in your booking systems?
Well, if you're an FTL, LTL carrier providing services to a freight forwarder or a BCO, one, you're going to get the ability to digitize your own environment, plan your own drivers, and optimize your own routes. You're going to be able to provide real-time milestone updates back up to your forwarding customer or your BCO customer, including PODs and document images. It's going to cut out a heck of a lot of manual back and forth. You're going to be able to automate tracking links to your customers as well. It'll be live tracking that will allow them to visualize the driver. As well as that, your upstream partner, your BCO partner or forwarding partner will be able to see your driver moving on their map, so they get real-time visibility. And if you put your cost tables in, like Mark mentioned, you'll have the ability to immediately advise your forwarding partner or BCO partner of the cost. So there's a whole host of benefits around getting your rates to your customer more quickly, if I can use those words, and even the documentation, the PODs, and cutting out the inefficient communications. And ultimately, your customer, your forwarder or your BCO partner is going to get all that data real time into their system, which is going to enhance their customer stickiness, which is ultimately who the transporter is providing services to.
So Shane, say for example, if I've got a delivery to far north Queensland, sometimes getting those PODs back could be 3 days or 4 days, but I need that PDF or an image of the POD. Yeah. So if I hear you correctly, that's something that you can do, right?
Absolutely. So if I'm a forwarder or a BCO and I'm supplying a customer in far north Queensland, and my Yojee platform is going to transfer the transport requirement to my carrier partner. That carrier partner, if they've got their own technology, they can just simply use an API to get the data from our TCMS platform and integrate their milestones back through. Or if they don't have any technology, they'll be able to actually use our Yojee platform to plan and execute and capture PODs in real time, and it will all transfer back. And that's where the forwarder BCO then just has a single experience, because it doesn't matter if they use a high-tech or a low-tech carrier. The ability to connect and retrieve milestones is the same for both of those partners.
Yeah, I think the biggest important thing here is it's all about getting paid, right? At the end of the day, it's a bit more to it, but getting paid. And so to your example, when you're sort of moving into rural Australia or the depths of Southeast Asia, it can take weeks and weeks. It can take 6 weeks to get your POD back. And people don't normally pay unless they get a POD. Whereas if you have a digital platform, albeit Yojee or something else, then that's instantaneous. As soon as it's dropped off, the POD goes all the way back up into the accounting. So it goes all the way back from the carrier system to the Yojee platform in the 3PL, and then even back to your customers as well, or the 3PL's accounting system. And so it can shorten the whole payment cycles and improve those payment cycles, which improves cash flow for the trucker, which is a big problem in Southeast Asia, getting paid for the work they do. So yeah, that's a really key thing.
Okay. So I've got a question from Derek here for you gentlemen, yeah? Is there an option to tie Yojee to a vehicle instead of a driver through the mobile app?
You can associate a driver to a vehicle, yes.
No, not associate a driver to the vehicle. I think in many parts of Asia, we swap out drivers.
Yep. So the app.
So are we?
The mobile phone.
Yeah, so we have that with one of our customers, and so you can assign directly, you can assign to vehicles and vehicles. So so then you're assigning vehicles. Sorry, start again. Yes, you can. You can assign consignments to either vehicles or drivers. You can associate vehicles to drivers and easily swap that on vehicle assignments. So when a driver logs in, they can log on as a driver, but that driver could have its vehicle swapped, and therefore the vehicle association has been changed. Or we have some customers who don't actually have drivers, they just have vehicles, and you just assign it to the vehicle and everyone shares the same vehicle ID, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does. Cool. Yeah, because especially when you're talking about like long haul trucking, you might change 2 or 3 drivers. So you use it more of like a telematics or telemetry system instead. So we've got a question from Jim at Chevron, yeah? So from a shipper's point of view, how easy can you integrate TCMS with an existing ERP or WMS?
Very obviously. We have all our APIs are published. We have our own in-house developers that can build integrations, or our customers or their carrier partners can also build integrations using those APIs. So I suppose it just comes down to if you've got your own resources in-house that can be deployed and build those connections. But certainly we connect to our customers' order management systems. We connect to a couple of different freight systems. We're already connecting to SAP. So short answer is, as long as you've got the technical skills, it's very easy.
And if you don't, we provide them, but it's weeks, not months. It's we did the SAP for APP in weeks. So obviously it's very difficult without knowing the details, but it's not an overly complicated process for us, no.
Okay, cool. So you may have touched on this during your presentation, gentlemen, but we've got a question from Vimal asking us, so any cross-border truckers or forwarders using your TCMS systems for tracking currently?
Specific data exactly, but it does work for cross-border, because I know I've done demos for that, so it would absolutely work.
Yes, no, we actually do. We have someone doing Singapore, Malaysia. So yeah, we do. But again, that just really comes down to the fact that it's multi-league. Like in South Africa, we have a customer and it doesn't go cross-border, but I think the real question here is, can it do a multi-leg? And we have consignments that go from Joburg all the way to Cape Town that hub and spoke through 3 or 4 different depots. So a consignment actually has a part, like a pickup and a delivery, and it has 4 line haul or FTL legs on a single consignment, right? Which in South Africa is just one country, but you could extrapolate that out to be multiple countries, right? What we don't have, the question is, we don't have customs. So there's not a customs module inside TCMS. So when it crosses border, all the compliance documentation and stuff would need to be done by a customs platform, but certainly hubbing and spoking all the way across Southeast Asia works.
Mark, that's automated based on rules as well. We know based on the origin of the destination, it has to route through certain hubs automatically.
Yeah, so you can set up rules on how the network looks, and then it'll build the legs. So the shipment could just go from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, and it will, based on a service type, it'll hub and spoke it through wherever it needs to go. Same with containers as well. It handles all the empty legs and full legs.
So
Sorry, Ramon.
Okay, so TCMS doesn't handle the customs documentation, but we can upload the customs permits to that shipment in TCMS so that the driver has access to that information, correct?
100%.
What-
Yeah. So all the
We have,
documentation. Sorry, Shane, you go. Sorry.
I was going to say, I love our driver chat feature where if you forget a document, from our TCMS portal, you can actually upload a document straight to a driver and it will upload straight to their app as well. But yeah, or any documentation you upload, and we're even with our customers that we're integrated with documentation as well, both receiving into the TCMS and sending back to their systems as well.
Okay, so I think you also answered this question with your Joburg to Cape Town example, but we do have a question here from Lei Yan. Is it limited to only Southeast Asia because cross-border can go all the way up to China as well? So if I understand it, Yojee can be implemented in most countries where there's a customer need, correct? But I'll let you answer that question.
I'll answer that, Shane. Yes, the short answer is yes, because the challenges that like we started mastering road freight in Southeast Asia, although it has its unique set of challenges, the challenges exist geographically anywhere in the world. I think we support South Africa, and we got had customers in Turkey and the Middle East, but that's more of a company thing, a strategic thing that in terms of customer support and where and how we want to sell and support our customers in those geographies rather than whether the technology works. I don't know, Shane, if you wanted to add to that. I just want to get that in.
Pretty much it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's more of a company strategic thing on which countries we go to rather than technology, yeah.
And I guess where the customer is as well, right? If you've got a customer approaching you from, say, Myanmar, for example,
yes,
if the terms are right, if it makes sense, you guys would be happy to come here as well.
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and so look, we have some customers who want us to go into Taiwan and China and stuff, and I'm more than happy to do that because the technology works. But I guess what I'm trying to stress there is we're not actively in mainland China selling, because it comes with its own challenges from a business perspective. But yeah, certainly if we've got because we've got quite a few enterprise customers, if they've got offices, and even if they had an office in we're talking to someone who's got offices all over the world, and so we'll entertain that for sure.
Excellent. So here's a good question actually from Emmanuel. Any issues or challenges dealing with regulatory issues in other countries?
I think, Emmanuel, as a TCMS, right, we don't really handle the regulatory requirements, right? We're a carrier management system that wants to be able to integrate with your carrier partners or your digitize your low carrier networks. But that's probably one of the key differentiators of our current product. That's we don't handle those regulatory issues. Like we're not a customs clearance system. In that sense, we're not going to manage vehicle compliance. Right? It's about giving our customers a portal to manage their carrier road networks from a transport requirements point of view.
Yeah, and I think to be fair as well, Shane, I don't think there's any TMS or TCMS type product out there that does the compliance piece. I mean, I think Mark said it earlier. Customs declarations, for example, are done by customs brokers using a customs brokerage system. And then that information can then be shared to that shipment. But I don't think there's any product out there that does both, because it's one's a motorcycle and one's a car. It's two different things, you know.
Yeah, it can
maybe
be.
not. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, and I think we had a question. Yeah. And I think this is an easy question for one of you chaps to answer from Jared. Do you provide training on using the TCMS system, and can you share more about the training?
Yeah, we do free training once a month, online sessions, which goes through our sort of new features that we invite our customers to. We have a knowledge base online, and we have the knowledge base integrated into the product with a live chat. So if you're on the product and said, "How do I enter an order?" It'll direct you to the knowledge base and give you that directive information. So we do focus very much on that. If people want, I like to think the product's intuitive in its own right, but if people need access to information, it's right at their fingertips.
And we do two other things we do is obviously when you sign up to the platform, you get training as well. So we'll train you on site or remote, whichever makes sense. But the other key thing is we also have a carrier adoption team. So one of the challenges that everyone in this region finds is getting their carriers to basically adopt software or adopt processes that basically give your business the edge it needs. And so what we do is we have a team dedicated to working with the carriers. So in that APP real life example, we sent one of our guys from the carrier adoption team, and he just trained the carriers and their drivers. He didn't actually train the customers, and he does refresher courses with them as well to make sure that they're using the software well, because it's not just about you guys using the software, it's about the carriers using the software to give the whole holistic collaborative approach, that because it's a data-driven system, so you want the data to be as clean as possible, starting from the driver. So we really do spend a lot of time focusing on that, and I think that's where our competitors somewhat fall down, is really trying to understand that adoption and training process, because that's half the
I was going to say the multi-language functionality as well that we have extends to the driver app as well, so the drivers can quickly change languages as they see fit. And same with the web portal.
User base and the size of your fleet, right? If you are operating 5 trucks and you've got, say, 20.
I didn't hear that. I just heard 5 trucks, and
the answer was yes.
the answer is yes, or if not, we'll make it happen.
All right. So
No.
I think with that,
Ramon,
sorry,
we didn't actually.
We didn't actually hear your question, Ramon. We were just mucking around, Shane and I. What was you cut out?
Okay, sorry. I said it also. I think the answer to that is also depends quite a fair bit on the customer size and the user base. If you've got 5 trucks, 10 customers, onboarding is going to be a lot simpler than if you have 100 trucks and 10,000 customers. So that's going to be a lot more challenging in terms of implementation.
Well, it scales, and we've had customers.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, well, customers that might choose to onboard a set of carriers. We'll do like what Mark was talking about with our carrier onboarding team. They'll go to site. We've had a lot of success with inviting the carriers into the freight forwarder or BCO office and holding sessions, getting posters with the QR codes to download the apps. So it is an absolute critical success factor. And yeah, big or small is a different approach. Sometimes it's just about finding the right subset of carriers to do in groups, or even if they're big enough, we'll go out to the carrier's site and train them at their site.
All right, great. Look, I think great session. Mark and Shane, 30 seconds to a minute wrap on each of you gentlemen before I hand you back to Brett and before I probably lose my connection again. If we could, starting with you, Mark.
Sorry, Ramon, I didn't hit 30 to 60 seconds on what?
Yeah, just to do a quick wrap up.
Okay. Look, yep, that's fine. I'll from my perspective, look, it's digitizing road networks in Southeast Asia is something that's very passionate to us, and I think it's just something I'd implore all of you on this webinar to think hard about whether your current processes work, whether the manual, whether the good enough is, or what you're doing is good enough, and really just sit down and explore about how you could sort of create more efficiencies in your networks, boost customer service, and try and take your transport carrier management to the sort of next level. Really, it's never really at the forefront of everyone's mind, but I would implore you to start thinking about it, because in a service-based industry, having digital solutions is imperative, really, for the future. So, Shane?
Yep,
Yeah, I think some of those last comments you mentioned, Mark, look, it's not a huge focus point because often it just happens, right? But your transport teams are dealing with a whole different array of systems, whether there's different partners they have to deal with or different low-tech carriers, fielding customer service questions. So if you want to lift up the hood and see what's happening down there, you'll find a lot of inefficiencies, and giving your team a single tool that actually drives better data quality up to the business and better customer service down to the customers will create, a long-lasting customer stickiness.
Thanks a lot, Shane. Thanks a lot, Mark. Brett, back to you.
Thanks, Ramon. Well, I think we'll do a quick wrap up, and certainly, we've heard about the industry challenges that these types of platforms try and address across, the fragmented carrier system that exists here in Asia in particular. Also, the challenges that we heard about in terms of multilingual capabilities of different countries and different teams. Also, the educational levels, and I think there was a really interesting point on the focus on carrier adoption and the focus on having a carrier adoption team that focuses on the user take up, and that type of focus is really important. Also, from the perspective of digitizing processes, it's really expediting the digitization, or through digitization, the return of the management of the POD process, and reducing the payment cycles, but also improving cash flows. And I think that's really critical for businesses, for carriers, and also for clients. So Mark and Shane, thank you very much for your contributions this morning. Thank you also to all the participants who joined the call, and highly interactive with a lot of questions from the audience, which has been fantastic. Certainly, if we've missed any questions, we'll give Mark and Shane the opportunity to follow up with the people who are asking those questions. Thank you, Ramon, for overcoming the tech challenges to be able to manage the Q&A process. And thank you again to the Yojee Sim team for supporting the logistics of this process. So thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.
Yeah, big thank you, everyone. Cheers.